When Reddit accused Apollo of being inefficient, its developer did something rare in a public fight. He posted the actual code. Apollo was, for years, the app a huge share of power users chose over Reddit's own. Then Reddit announced new API pricing that would have cost popular third-party apps an enormous amount every month. The developer, Christian Selig, said the numbers made the app impossible to keep running. But the dispute did not stay about money. Reddit leadership publicly suggested that Apollo was inefficient, that it made far more requests than it needed to, and even implied bad behavior behind the scenes. Reddit's argument was essentially that Apollo was a heavy, wasteful client, and that the new pricing simply reflected the real cost it imposed. Selig disagreed sharply. He argued the app was actually careful about how it talked to Reddit's servers, and that the public characterization was misleading. The problem with a fight like this is that most people watching have no way to check who is telling the truth. It becomes a matter of which side you already trust. So Selig did something most developers never do in the middle of a corporate dispute. He open-sourced the backend. The repository, christianselig/apollo-backend, holds the server code that powered Apollo's notifications and its subreddit watchers. It is written in Go, and it now sits publicly on GitHub with more than 3,600 stars. The idea was simple. Instead of arguing about how the server behaved, let anyone read exactly how it behaved. The backend's job was narrow and specific. It checked for user notifications so people got a ping when someone replied to them, and it powered subreddit watchers that alerted users when a new post matched their interests. That polling is exactly the kind of activity that generates a lot of API traffic. By publishing it, Selig let engineers inspect how often it actually called Reddit, how it batched work, and whether it was the runaway resource hog it had been painted as. This is what makes the story interesting beyond Reddit drama. In most platform disputes, the platform holds all the data, and the developer holds none of the leverage. Open sourcing the backend flipped that. It turned a claim you had to take on faith into something you could audit line by line. It will not force a company to change its mind, but it changes the audience. Now the jury is every engineer who can clone a repository. It is worth being honest about the ending. Apollo still shut down. The repository is marked as archived, meaning it will not be updated because the server it ran is no longer needed. So this was not a victory that saved the app. It was closer to leaving evidence at the scene. The code stands as a record of how one of the most popular third-party clients was actually built, preserved long after the app itself disappeared from phones. For anyone building on top of someone else's platform, there is a real lesson here. Your relationship with that platform can change overnight, and when it does, the party with transparency has the stronger position. You do not have to open source everything, but knowing your own systems well enough to prove how they behave is a kind of insurance. Selig could answer a vague accusation with a precise, checkable answer, and that is a powerful place to be. It helps to remember the wider wreckage around the single repository. Apollo was not alone. The API pricing change pushed several major third-party Reddit clients to shut down within the same window, and in protest, thousands of subreddits went private or restricted, some of them permanently. For a stretch, large parts of the site were simply unreachable. The dispute reshaped how people access Reddit and hardened a lot of developers' views about building on top of a platform they do not control. Against that backdrop, Selig's choice to publish the backend reads less like a single grievance and more like documentation of a turning point, a careful record left behind, as an entire ecosystem of apps was being dismantled around him. The Apollo saga is remembered mostly as the moment third-party Reddit apps died, but tucked inside it is a small, stubborn act of openness that is worth remembering on its own. Faced with a claim he could not disprove with words, a developer answered with source code and let the world check his work. Whatever you think of the outcome, that instinct to make your systems legible instead of just defending them, is one more builders should copy. If you want, clone the repo and read it yourself. That is the whole point. Subscribe to Forge Stack for more stories where the source code tells the real story.